welcome to Retro Warriors episode 80.
Woo!
As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by resident old bastard Chris Saturn.
Hello.
Hello. This 80. We made
Yeah,
it.
that's crazy.
The big 80.
Yeah.
Which, that's not a thing.
No.
I mean, it's a thing, but
It's
no
not
one,
a thing people celebrate.
no one
like
cares
that.
about it,
No.
I guess is the point.
Yeah. We're halfway to the second year, the end of the second year.
Yeah. I know, we
Ish.
started 2015. Oh my God, it's 2017. I was about
Yeah.
to go, it's only 2016, but it's
No.
not. It's It's the
Yeah.
future.
We're
New
in the
Nintendo
future.
consoles are happening. It's,
Arnold Schwarzenegger's the president.
yeah, I wish, God. I do want to. You sent a thing that because we don't do politics on this show.
No.
I don't think it's hard to listen back and realize how we fall on any political situations.
Probably not.
But there was an executive order written up today that you sent
Well, there's
to the group chat.
Well, no, that's still just a vague threat at this point.
Okay, so basically it would be tariffs.
Yeah.
So it may be a tariff on video games.
Well, on everything.
Well,
But-
yeah.
But video games would in fact be affected, and that could, it stems from our fearless leader's fear of East Asia,
right.
and he doesn't want.
Well, the
things
problem
coming
is
from
that
East
people
Asia.
kept moving everything to East Asia.
Yes.
And this is what happens.
Well, not everybody, because there were plenty of things that have been moving to Mexico.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Anyway, I did want to mention that.
Ironically,
just 'cause-
Toyota has moved almost all their production to America.
yeah, I don't know if anybody that listens to the show follows politics
Right.
or anything like that, but if there is a tariff that would raise the prices of consumer goods, I would personally be against it, and I'm
Yeah.
sure there would be petitions and
I'm-
stuff like that, and I do
I'm
want to make
hoping
people
that
aware.
the ESA petitions against it and lobbies against it. I
Yeah.
think they will. That sounds like the kind of thing they would do, just because it would hurt video game sales.
Oh,
so
yeah,
I would
it
hope
hurt
that the
'em
ESA
bad.
would be on board with that.
Absolutely. So keep an eye out. If it does go anywhere, it very well may not. It could just be, like you said, a vague threat.
If you live in the States, write to your congressman or senator and tell them how much you love your SegMeg. And
Yeah.
they should get the point from that. That should be enough information they need, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just, dear Senator Lieberman, I love my Smegmeg. Please don't take it away.
I hate Joe Lieberman so much. You know, there's a part of me that from way back in the 90s when there was all the kerfluffle, I believe is the technical term.
Yeah, that is the
about
term they use.
The video game violence and the sex and the blood and and all the horrible things destroying our youth. Joseph Lieberman and Hillary Clinton both were just so obnoxious.
They got to save. Would somebody think of the children?
Right?
Maud Flanders clip. Pablo, cut that in right here. Maud Flanders saying, would somebody
Yeah.
think of the children?
Yeah.
Please.
But, none of them were as bad as that judge, I think he was in Missouri, who had said that one of the great threats was the resident of Evil Creek. Which is still, man, I wish Capcom would make the Resident of Evil Creek,
Yeah.
like as a parody game, like as a side series.
Mm.
That'd be so great. I'd play that.
I feel like it would just basically be an old guy by a creek.
Yeah.
Then that would be about it.
I'd be fine with that.
Anyway, my week, I did have stuff and things happen. I just 2 days ago received my copy of Yakuza 0,
Yeah, I've heard of that.
which I effectively traded you for.
Yeah.
And I've been playing it, and it's very enjoyable.
Mhm.
It's very enjoyable. And this is my first real Yakuza game.
Mhm.
Like, I've dabbled around with like 4 or 5 or something, but you
Right.
can't. That's the kind of game where you turn it on and immediately you're like, I have no
You're
idea
just overwhelmed with things.
what's happening to anything. Who are these people? And they all have crazy names. Well,
Right.
they all have very normal Japanese names, I assume. But to me,
Right.
it's insanity.
Yeah.
I'm like, I have no idea.
There's syllables and letters and
There's punctuation I've never seen before. So, I have been playing it. It's very enjoyable. I was most interested in it because it is set in the 80s, which is the best era, as
Right.
everyone knows.
Yes.
And
as anyone who has played GTA Vice City could tell you.
clearly.
Yeah.
So it's set in the 80s, and it's effectively a prequel to the entire Yakuza series.
Right.
So it's a good jumping on point.
Mm.
It very much plays like a pre-GTA PS2 game.
Like Shenmue era.
Kinda. Like it's not open world. Like looking at it, your first thought would be, okay, it's Japanese Grand Theft Auto. I got it. Cool. It's
Right.
not at all. It's basically 3D River City Ransom.
Right.
More so than it is anything like an open world game.
Yeah.
Because
So
there's
the bouncer
Yeah, kinda. That's a hurtful but accurate comparison. You're not wrong.
Yeah, that's painful.
But it's weird because it keeps those things from that era of PS2 kind of pseudo, not really open but open-ish world games.
Yeah.
In that there's a lot of dialogue and a lot of segments that you have to like button mash your way through, and a lot of like invisible walls and things like
Right.
that. But for some reason, it's not turning me off yet. And I think it's because it has arcade accurate versions of Hang On and Fantasy Zone
God damn it.
and Space Harrier built in, as well as a UFO crane machine with little tiny Opa-Opas and stuffed Mega Drives.
So they basically just put like what was that? The Sega System 1 board, just a cheap emulator of that in there.
Pretty much,
Yeah.
yeah. So I spend as much time as I can doing that at the arcade in the game, which is the Sega-only arcade.
Yeah, of course.
You know?
Just like in real life.
And doing the karaoke games. And then
Nice.
the combat is really fun. So I've been thoroughly enjoying it. To anyone that likes kind of 3D brawlers, I'd say pick it up. There's a lot of story in it, which I'm not a huge fan of, but I'm kind of getting invested in the characters, and it's silly enough, often enough,
Yeah.
that you're like, all right, this is fine.
Right.
Like there's a whole segment I just played through where the main character the main character.
The main character, insert Japanese name here.
Yeah, these people grab him off the street and are like, will you pretend to be the producer on our set? So they're like, oh, you need to go like using on-set movie talk, like go jizz the dishes or whatever. I don't know what phrases they use. And you have to guess.
Is that a movie phrase?
Yeah, it is. You ever been on a set?
Yeah.
I have in
Yeah.
a Japanese video game.
Yeah.
So you have to guess like what that is, and they give you 3 or 4 options, and you'll do it, and then they'll be like, what is wrong with you? Are you an idiot? You dumb idiot.
Why did you just jizz on these dishes?
Yeah, and then you get to beat a bunch of guys up. So it's fun. A lot of semen. It's enjoyable.
That sounds like quality gameplay.
Other than that, I've watched 5.5 seasons of Community
Oh, that's
in
good.
a week.
Yeah?
Because yeah.
Had you seen it before? Or was
No,
this...
no,
Oh,
I had
okay.
never seen it
All right.
before. Robbie came over one night and was going on and on about it, and I was like, well, I watched a little bit. It didn't really grab me, but then it was in the top of my Hulu queue, and I just finished rewatching It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Love that show.
Philadelphia for maybe the 5th time.
Yeah.
And it was there, and I was like, all right, I'll watch that entire series, and I almost have. As of
Nice.
tomorrow, I'll probably finish it.
Nice.
Because I've learned this, when you're taking care of a baby all day, you can watch TV. TV's easy.
Yeah.
Playing a game? Oh, no. The child loves PlayStation controllers,
Yeah.
which at first I thought was cute and endearing, and now it is a pain in my ass. I remember when she was first born, I was like, I hope she likes video games. Now I'm like, I hope she hates video games and never touches mine ever.
Right.
Anyway, that's all I had going on this week. I know you've been playing some Dragon Quest VIII.
Yeah, Dragon Quest VIII came out. It's a really, really solid port.
Mm-hmm. I've been hearing that it's a great version of the game.
I would actually say it runs more smoothly than the 3DS version of 7 did.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, it's
Now 7, to be fair, didn't run fantastically well anyway.
yeah, like with 7 there was sometimes some input lag, especially in the menus.
Right.
8 has none of that. It is super clean and smooth for a game that is essentially more sophisticated.
Right.
Do
you think maybe they brought over some of the mobile port code?
I think possibly killing 3D might have helped as well,
Yeah.
because the game.
yeah, they did, didn't
Yeah,
they?
the game
did they
only
have 3D
supports
in
3D.
7?
Yeah.
Huh. Was it only in battles or something? Or
No, it was everywhere in 7.
Huh.
In 8, you can only see 3D in the battle records menu.
Yeah.
Everywhere else is 2D.
That's strange.
Yeah.
That's strange that they left it in there.
Right. And but yeah, so it's a good port. I am finding that I am having a hard time replaying the game, which I have found every time I try to replay 8.
Right.
I don't know what it is about 8, but
Which is odd because 8 is I would say the most celebrated Dragon Quest game
It's
by far and away.
and I recommend it to everyone.
Yeah.
But I always have a hard time replaying it. I think there's something about the pacing of it that just doesn't mesh with me right,
Yeah.
to where I want to move at a faster pace than it moves.
Right.
And I don't. There are a lot of quality of life
especially-
improvements.
That's
though.
especially odd to me because Dragon Quest, as far as JRPGs go, is an incredibly slow
Yes.
game.
And 8 is actually a faster paced one than most of them. But there's something about it that just, I don't know. It just, I feel like I'm having to halt for story segments more than I am used to.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is. It did lose some of the quality of life stuff from the PS2 version
Mhm.
because the PS2 version was drastically changed for international audiences,
Mhm.
just to make it not feel like a traditional Dragon Quest game.
Right.
They rolled some of that back and introduced some different quality of life improvements.
Okay.
For one thing, you instantly heal all of your health and magic every time you gain a level.
Oh, that's nice.
So if
That's
you're
real
in,
nice.
in the middle of nowhere about to die and you gain a level, suddenly you have all the magic necessary to heal yourself,
Nice.
and you're right back to fighting conditions. So that makes things much easier
Right.
to grind, if nothing else.
Mhm.
I'd still definitely recommend it. I'm gonna try to force myself through it again, but I always have a hard time pushing myself through 8, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
I don't have a good
That's
answer for that.
so weird.
I also started playing Resident Evil 7, which
Mhm.
is just constantly reminding me of the first 3-4 Resident Evil games.
Really.
It's
Now,
really got
let me
that
ask you
PS1
this.
Resident Evil vibe.
Let me ask you this, because I don't play horror games.
Yeah, at all.
Not even like no.
Yeah, you don't
Re-
even look at them.
Resident Evil 4 scared the shit out of me.
Yeah, Resident Evil 4. Okay, like if we have to put the series on a scary meter of
Mhm.
1 to 10, I would put the first like 3 games at like a somewhere between a 4 and a 6
Yeah.
because they're scary, but they're goofy scary.
Right.
4 took itself a little more
I
seriously.
had to stop playing 0 because it scared me so bad.
Yeah,
and
the
the remake.
GameCube remakes, I'd put those at like a 7 or 8.
Yeah, those scared the crap out of me.
4, I'd put it like a 6 or 7 because there's a lot of parts that are scary, but it's more action movie scary.
Right.
5 and 6 are stupid. They're like 2 or 3. They might as well just be comedy. This one I'd put it like a 9. This one's got it.
Really?
Oh yeah.
It's that because that was my question. Is and I don't know if I invented this in my head, this parallel or whatever, but it felt like after PT happened,
Mhm.
they were like, oh, we need to do some of that shit.
Yeah, there's definitely some of that vibe to it. If nothing else, the first person perspective is
Right.
there. It's clear that they did take a lesson from that, and also from a lot of indie horror games recently,
Mhm.
like Amnesia and whatnot, and
Right.
Outlast. But it is they definitely went back to the horror stylings
Mhm.
that they used to do instead of the action style. There is still action in it though. You do still fight things.
Mhm.
A lot of those things seem to be invincible, which
It
is terrifying.
The whole thing seemed very, and I guess it's in the vein of the same thing I just
Mhm.
said in it with PT. It felt very Silent Hill-ish.
Yeah. Well, it
You know?
feels like because like the first few Resident Evil games were definitely in the vein of like a George Romero zombie movie.
Right.
And then 4 went a little more like Serpent and the Rainbow kind of horror, like weird
Mhm.
80s horror. 5 and 6 went to like Predator.
Right.
Like it was just practically an action movie.
Mhm.
This one has kind of got a like a Devil's Rejects
Huh.
vibe to it.
That
or-
movie scared the shit out of me too.
Yeah.
Speaking of shit that scared the shit out of
Yeah,
me.
it's got that like Hills Have Eyes kind of vibe.
That movie scared the shit out of me too.
And like it's got this hillbilly family.
No, I
who is
can't.
stalking you throughout most of it.
Maybe it's because it's so could happen, and especially now that I'm moving out of the country. But like murderous hillbilly
Yeah.
families is near the top
The-
of my list of fears.
So there's this murderous hillbilly family in the game. That's
It's-
the main thing for the first, as far as I've gotten.
It's like death, something happening to my family, murderous hillbilly family. This is the
So you're trying to evade this family, and like I was at a point where shit was finally starting to calm down a little bit.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, back to exploring, back to finding puzzle pieces. And I'm walking down a hallway that I swear I've walked down 100 times before.
hmm
And the wall to my right that is just a wall, and I've walked past it 100 times, starts to cave in, and here comes the hillbilly crashing through it, but he's just like casually walking with a hammer in his hand, and he has collapsed to this wall in front of him by casually walking. And then he just looks at me and says, "Let's not be running." And I'm like, okay, let's nope the fuck out of here. It's just terrifying.
You
So
describing
good.
that to me has scared me. I'm like, I've got like a creepy going on,
Oh,
like,
so good.
my God.
But no, it's really good. It gets that vibe the old ones got, and it's the 20th anniversary of Resident Evil. So for people who were fans of it back then, definitely dive back in. It's really good. Digging it. Loving it.
I wish I could enjoy that. I cannot.
Fucking love it.
As scary as I can go and still have a good time is Evil Dead 2. And that movie still scares me.
Yeah.
I still get scared watching it. And I've seen it 100 times.
Love that movie.
Anyway, I don't know that there was any news of note.
I can't think of any retro news now.
It's been kind of quiet.
Well, everybody is still burnt out on the Switch announce.
Oh yeah, everyone. It's. I'm not. I'm
Yeah.
still like eating up every piece of
Yeah,
news. But I know every
definitely.
normal human out there is like, stop, please
Right.
stop. So I guess we can dig into the topic at hand. This week we are doing Street Fighter 2.
The greatest fighting game of all time.
At least the most popular
Fighters
one.
history.
God damn it. Someone I want to say it was our patron Rob Powers. I want to say it was him. Messaged us on Twitter with a picture of the first Street Fighter. The screenshot he was playing. He was like, "Saturn was right." I was like, but I did want to talk about this because one, I've been playing it. Two, it was easy to play a bunch of these games because I am still mid-move. I've got this show and next show, and then after that, we'll officially be in the new home, and I'm sure shit's just gonna get crazier from there. But so the fighting games are easy to research because it's not like researching an RPG. So I actually got to play multiple versions of it.
Yeah.
And plus, there's obviously the upcoming Ultra Street Fighter 2, so I want to have covered Street Fighter, and I wanted to do the research personally and get back in the groove of Street Fighter 2 so that Ultra Street Fighter 2 could thoroughly disappoint me, as I'm expecting it to.
I don't expect it to thoroughly disappoint me. I expect it to thoroughly underwhelm me.
At this point, after this week of research, I have very specific opinions on Street Fighter. Like, it went from being like, oh, any Street Fighter 2 is great, to I'm like, no, only this specific version of Street Fighter 2, because I never experienced that back in the day. Back in the day, everyone's like, no, it's Super Street Fighter is better than 2 Turbo. You know, like, everyone had their opinions. And I was just all, you know, I was too young for it. I was like, Street Fighter 2 is fun. I like it. I just played World Warrior or whatever we had, you know, because whatever. But now I have incredibly specific and
now you have gone through the battlefields that we experienced in the early 90s.
Now I'm like, oh, you're playing that version?
Yeah.
You know, so I do want to dig into Street Fighter.
Yeah.
And I want to start with each of our first experiences. Saturn, I'm sure yours is probably more in depth than mine. The first time that I remember, and this is probably not the first time I actually played Street Fighter. It's just the first time I remember seeing a game called Street Fighter 2. Because most of these retro games we cover, I don't remember my first experiences with because I was too young. But this one I do. We went to pick up our pizza at Papa John's, and it wasn't ready yet. Yeah, so, you know, but it's pizza, and it wasn't Pizza Hut.
That is technically true.
So, in the most legal sense, it was pizza. So it's just round disc, cheese, pepperoni. It's pizza, legally.
Yeah.
So we were waiting for it because it wasn't ready yet. So we had like 10, 15 minutes to sit there and wait. And in the lobby, they had a game called Street Fighter 2. And I remember standing there for a while and watching the intro of these two dudes like beating the shit out of each other in the street. And
Simon and Max.
Oh, pardon me. And
like 2-3 years ago, Capcom was like, those guys in the intro of Street Fighter 2, they're named Simon and Max.
What relevance do they have to the game?
Exactly. But like the Street Fighter
way.
community flipped out. They're like, they have names now.
Well,
like,
put them in a game.
Who
then.
cares, right? Anyway,
I would love to know the origin between for those. I mean,
like what made them hate each other so much?
Well, but like, why is it even in the game?
Like,
it has nothing.
They are such bad fighters that they didn't even make it into the tournament.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. Maybe this is like this. That was the pre-tournament. These are the tryouts. These are the public tryouts.
Yeah, that was the round where Guile beat them.
And judging by how they fight, he beat him really bad.
Yeah.
Probably to death. That's why we haven't seen him.
Right.
So, and I remember watching that and I was like, oh, this is awesome. Look at these guys. And it's like, don't do drugs. And I was like, all right.
Episode 80 of Retro Warriors is dedicated to the memories of Simon and Max,
who are now dead, thanks to Guile.
Thanks to Flash Kick to the face.
And I played it, and I played as Ryu, of course, because he's the default.
He's the first person you see.
Option. And I don't remember anything after that. I remember really enjoying it and being like, this is really, really fun.
Yeah.
And then I never owned Street Fighter 2 again until I was a teenager years later. Bought it at a Blockbuster for Super Nintendo, and it was just World Warrior.
Right.
And I didn't know there's 2 Turbo and Hyper Fighting and all this other shit. I was just like, Street Fighter, sure. And we played the hell out of it for like a week. And I was like, it's okay, I guess. I don't know why everybody's freaking out about it. It's Street Fighter, the World Warrior, or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Little did I know that I had the worst version of Street Fighter.
Well, you had the first version of...
Right.
The first real Street Fighter game.
Which is the worst version.
Yes.
So
and it could be worse. You could have had Fighting Street for the Turbo CD.
That's true.
You could have had...
Why was that a CD game?
You could have had Street Fighter 2010, the final fight on NES.
That's true. I didn't have to go through that disappointment. I can't even imagine. Why, Saturn? Throw that
I
in the
still
garbage.
have the original box too.
Because nobody else wants it.
No, they don't.
You keep trying to throw it out, and the dump keeps returning it to your
Yes.
house. We don't want this.
In a nice package.
Fire it into space. We don't want it on this planet. Anyway, so I did want to talk about your first experience with Street Fighter 2, because you were around, like you were old enough to engage with it.
I remember the hype. I remember first hearing about it from someone at school.
Yeah.
And someone saying, hey, there's this game Street Fighter.
Right.
And they have it at 7-Eleven.
Okay.
That was my first knowledge of it. And I was like, I don't...
So you got
whatever.
your Slurpee and you went and played Street Fighter.
I was like, who cares about the game at 7-Eleven? I have a Nintendo.
Right.
And I don't need your weird...
And I've got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighter. I don't need that game.
That came out way after Street Fighter, man.
That's even sadder that happened.
Yeah, that was part of the Street Fighter hype, was games like Tournament Fighter trying to emulate it. That was a post Street Fighter game.
That's depressing.
No, pre Street Fighter fighting games were like Karate Champ.
Yeah, basically.
So, I didn't care when I first heard about it. I was like, cool.
Right.
And then I happened to be at 7-Eleven and I saw a bunch of people surrounding it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh,
it's a thing
here.
now.
So I go and I watch, and I'm trying to figure out, like, I remember initially trying to figure out what the hype was.
Right.
And I couldn't, like, I was just like, it's two guys beating each other up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, well, I get it. It is a thing.
Right.
And people want to play it. And then it came out on Super Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my brother's friends, my brother is older than me, one of my brother's friends bought a copy. He did not own a Super Nintendo. He wanted it so bad, he bought the cartridge without owning the system to play it on.
Right, and just stared at it.
Just so he could bring it to our house and play it. So he came over after school that day with his copy of Street Fighter 2 that he bought for his Super Nintendo he didn't have.
Right.
And I was like, but I want to play, Final Fantasy 2 or Mario World or whatever the hell I was going to play.
Mario was missing.
Yeah, no, never that. And my brother was like, well, let's just give it a chance. It's multiplayer. We can all play it. And I was like, oh, okay.
Right.
So I'll get a chance to play? And they're like, yeah, even you will get a chance to play.
Even you, dummy.
Right? So they put it in, and at first I'm just like, whatever. And then I see the character select screen, and I'm suddenly enthralled.
Right.
I'm like, there are 8 people I can be in this game. This is exciting.
That is a shitload of people compared to other games at the time.
Like it was much like seeing the Mega Man stage select screen the first time. It's like, I have a choice in this. Because it's not the game just guiding me along its path.
Yeah,
I have a choice.
That is important that you bring that up, because in everyone kind of glosses over the fact that you could choose which level you wanted in Mega Man, and that it did have those portraits of those characters. To have that many distinct characters.
Yeah.
In a game,
was
just it wasn't gonna. There's Mario, there's Green Mario, there's Bowser, and there's Peach, and that's it.
Yeah,
like you didn't have games that had this has 12 distinct characters with their own movesets, their own storylines and everything, own blood type. Thanks, Japan. I don't know why I need to know that.
In Japan, that's basically the same as their astrological.
Yeah, it's
sign.
like horoscopes.
Yeah,
which is weird to me.
Thanks, Japan. Anyway, so it was enthralling once I knew there were multiple characters.
Right.
And then there was the matches are so fast that everybody's passing the controller back and forth. Everybody is legitimately getting a chance to play in short order. In 2 hours, the 6 people in the room all got several chances to play. So it wasn't like some racing game where the race could last 10 or 15 minutes, or Mario where if you have a successful run,
you got to wait till they die.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was fast paced, it was multiplayer, and there was the selection. So it was immediately exciting.
Right.
And so then I wanted it, but I had to wait until my birthday at the end of the year. So So it was months.
So that friend came over a lot.
A lot. And any time that we couldn't play it, like if we were in trouble or if we had something to do after school, he found someone else with a Super Nintendo and he would go to their house.
He didn't just leave it at your house?
No.
What is he going to do? I guess go to other people's houses.
Exactly. The moment,
Street Fighter hobo there.
Right. If he could stay at our house until his bedtime, he would leave it there until the next day. But if he had to leave at like 6, he was taking it with him.
I do feel like there is some explorable storyline parallels between Ryu and your Street Fighter hobo friend.
Right.
Just want to throw that out there.
James, if you happen to ever listen to this, you're now the Street Fighter hobo friend. But no, so he he would just take it with him, and then finally when it came time for my birthday, I remember I got to go to Toys R Us with my aunt, and she was like, "Pick out a game," and I was like, "That's
cool
easy.
spot.
Street Fighter. It has to be Street Fighter." And she's like, "That sounds violent."
Oh,
And I'm
no.
like, it's not.
Yeah.
She was like, "I don't know," and I was like, "My mom said I could have it," and she was like, "I don't believe you."
If you don't buy me Blood, Death, Kill Guys
Right?
2 right now.
Well, that episode of The Simpsons, I'm pretty sure was based on Street Fighter.
Really?
Because I'm pretty sure that aired before Mortal Kombat.
I always assumed it was Mortal
I
Kombat.
always, in my mind, I was associated with Mortal Kombat, but if it came out after Mortal Kombat, it was like right at Mortal Kombat.
What was it? It was
Bloodstorm or
Blood-
Bone Storm.
Bone Storm, that was it.
Bone Blood.
Yeah. And Thrill House.
Yeah, so it was a thing. The parents were a little worried about Street Fighter. They weren't
Right.
as worried as they became about Mortal Kombat.
Right.
But it was still a game about punching each
Street
other.
Fighter got them to pay attention.
Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, anything that has a group of children doing something
Yeah.
instead of just one or two, people are like, all right, what's going on that's not supposed to be happening here? Because that's the only time that children
Yeah.
congregate.
Now, by the time it came out on Super Nintendo, Champion Edition started showing up in arcades.
Mm-hmm.
And that was already a thing.
Yeah.
And everybody was freaking out about, oh my God, you can play as the bosses.
Mm-hmm.
And then, what if you could play as the bosses at home? And then Nintendo Power printed that code that lets you play as the same character versus each other
Mm-hmm.
on the original one,
Mm-hmm.
which was down R up LYB
Mm-hmm.
on the Capcom screen. And my hands got so good at entering that fucking code. It's just it's second nature to me now.
Yeah.
But
Because a lot of people forget. I mean, this is, and I say forget. Maybe they haven't, but this is before you could play as boss characters.
Right.
This is before there were mirror matches. This is
Right.
before there were different costume
Right.
colors. Even
Yeah.
I mean, it was.
and
it
so
was,
when you put in that code in the original Street Fighter 2 for Super Nintendo, it unlocked character versus same character for mirror matches,
Mhm.
and it unlocked all of their Champion Edition costumes.
Mhm.
And it wasn't just like some other color; it was literally the costumes from Champion Edition.
Yeah.
So that led credence to maybe you can play as the bosses.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's in there. Maybe there's another code.
How many fanzine gaming magazines released that as? Because hold on, there was the Shenlong code.
Right. No, fuck
Which-
you, EGM.
That was the most famous one, and that was their April Fool's Day
Yeah,
joke that year. EGM, for people that don't remember, used to print fake game tips as April Fools,
Yeah.
and they wouldn't tell you to the next month, and you didn't have the internet, so you didn't know.
Right.
And it was a code to play as Shenlong.
Yeah, who was a mistranslation.
Yeah, and
But
then
they had made up this elaborate backstory for him.
so Shenlong was Ryu and Ken's master.
Right.
And then of course later on we get Goki and everything else
Right.
and blah 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 blah. But at the time it was like, oh, you can play as Shenlong. That's the guy
Right.
that Ryu talks about.
Yeah, and everybody was super excited about it.
Yeah.
And I don't know anyone who didn't try it.
Mm-hmm.
Like that had to have been the best-selling gaming magazine that month because everyone I knew, once they heard about that rumor, found a copy
You
of
think
that.
kids would have figured out like, hey, next month is April.
No.
Like
No one thought twice until they printed the redaction the next month.
Right.
But like I remember there was a Game Genie code in GamePro that would kind of allow you to play as a glitchy version of Sagat, but it would crash your system after a round or two.
Mm-hmm.
And if you got to Bison playing as glitchy Sagat, it might even destroy your cartridge.
Right.
Everyone I knew played that fucking code because they were like, see, it's proof that he's in there. And I mean, he looks like a trash can on top of a car, but he's there.
But he's there.
Yeah. And yeah, it was a mess
Yeah.
with just bad information and bad codes. And then fucking Nintendo Power
Mm-hmm.
sent all of their subscribers that VHS tape.
Mm-hmm.
There was an advertisement that Street Fighter 2 Turbo was coming soon to the Super Nintendo.
Right.
And the box that the VHS tape came in looked like the Super Nintendo box for Street Fighter 2 Turbo. So when you first opened the mail and you saw this, you were like, oh my God, I got a Super Nintendo game in the mail and it's Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Oh my God,
Right.
And then you had an aneurysm and you died.
And then you took a VHS tape out and tried to cram it into your
Yeah,
Super
you
Nintendo
you
anyway.
took it out and you were like, it's a fucking VHS tape. What did they do?
Yeah.
And it's a 20-minute advertisement saying, hey, it's coming out. And that's it. But it got the hype up.
Right.
And at the time, it hadn't even been announced that I had heard for Super Nintendo
Mhm.
that it was coming out, but the Genesis version of Champion Edition had been announced.
Mhm.
And everybody was so pissed that Genesis was going to get Champion Edition.
Right.
But then Super Nintendo was going to get Turbo. So the Genesis people were so pissed this Super Nintendo was going to get Turbo. Well, it turns out they both had both on them.
Yeah.
So it didn't matter.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, let's back up a bit and let's talk before we dig too far into home releases. I do want to discuss one, arcade releases.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know
They
all
came
of the
out
different
so-
versions.
Okay, so there
'Cause
was
there's a lot.
the official ones. There
Right.
was Street Fighter 2. There was Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition, or
Mhm.
Street Fighter 2 Dash in Asia.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting, or
Mhm.
Street Fighter 2 Turbo in Asia.
Mm-hmm.
There was Super Street Fighter 2
Mm-hmm.
and Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, or Super Street Fighter 2 Dash.
Now, Super Street Fighter
Or
2
X.
Turbo was the one. That one was not released on 16-bit systems.
Unless you count the 3DO.
No one counts the 3DO for
No.
anything. So it was basically Saturn and up.
Yeah, essentially.
And that's is basically the definitive versions.
Well,
Super
they
Street Fighter 2
did
Turbo.
release a Hyper Street Fighter 2 arcade machine
Mm-hmm.
during the early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be technically the definitive arcade Street Fighter 2.
Okay.
It was also the last ever CPS2 arcade game that Capcom put out.
Mhm.
Well, after they had retired the CPS2 arcade system,
Right.
they retroactively released Hyper Street Fighter 2.
Hmm.
So that would be the definitive version. Came out in, I think, 02?
So does Hyper let you play as Akuma?
Yes.
Okay. Because that's all I really
Hyper
care about.
includes everything from every previous version.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you select a character, you can select them in their Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter 2 Champion, Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Super Street Fighter 2, or Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo incarnations.
Mm-hmm.
And you can play against the other character in any of those incarnations.
Now, is there a home version of that?
Yes, it is on PS2 and Xbox.
Okay. Okay. So that's the one I have not played.
Yes.
Because I've played up to the Saturn version, which is Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo.
Yes.
Yeah. Because this isn't confusing at all.
No.
But
For those of us who lived through it, no.
it should be noted that, it's easy to look back and see immediately be like, how were people not pissed that they kept releasing so
Right.
many different versions?
And
But-
they were.
But early on, it was like, please release more
Yeah,
versions.
yeah.
Please give us more shit.
I would say when Champion Edition came out was when the peak of the hype was there.
Mm-hmm.
The release of Turbo to arcades was almost quiet
Mhm.
in much of the US anyway. I can't speak for everywhere. Maybe on the coasts it was big, but we only started to see it as it was already getting announced for Super NES and Genesis.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time we saw it, it was already exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Like we didn't have any hype to have for it.
Right.
So it was just like, oh my God, there's even more Street Fighter.
Mm-hmm.
By the time Super hit arcades, there was already starting to be the fatigue.
Yeah.
It was, I just got Turbo. What the fuck?
And a lot of people, and I didn't know this, and this is where my opinions started forming,
Yeah.
is I was like, all right, well, Super doesn't have the Turbo, but
Yeah,
Turbo doesn't have the characters.
Yeah, and that pissed me off initially because I was like, I already got used to playing fast.
Right.
I don't want to go back to playing slow.
Yeah.
But I do want to play as Cammy because look at her butt.
Right. And you were a kid.
Yeah.
Of course.
I was 14, 15 years old and she had a butt.
Yeah.
So
Well, but then, like me going back on it, it was hard for me to play Street Fighter 2 for a long time because I really dug into the Alpha games, Alpha
Right.
2 and 3
I
specifically.
love Alpha.
So going back to Street Fighter 2, it felt so slow. Slow
Yeah.
to the point that it was hard to even pull off moves because I had
Right.
to do them so slow and I
Yeah.
was so muscle memory trained
Right.
to do them so fast.
Right.
So I've decided that my version that I prefer between Super and Turbo, my Super Nintendo versions,
Mhm.
because it is my preferred console.
Yeah.
It's Turbo.
Yeah.
Because I don't care about the new characters.
That's fair.
Because Cammy and DJ and T-Hawk and Fei Long can just suck it.
I do like the art better in Super.
Yeah.
Like the characters, the portraits.
Yeah, they
Mhm.
fixed it.
Much better.
They fixed it. But I did want to mention, because you were talking about the craze, and it was
Mhm.
legitimate craze.
Oh, yeah.
We have a quote here from Wikipedia. It's multiple sources, so I'm not going to give all the different
Right,
people. But the video game console port sold more than 14 million copies.
Yeah.
Super NES port of the original game sold 6.3, making it Capcom's best-selling single consumer software until Resi 5, and
Yeah.
remaining their best-selling game software on a single platform through the present day.
Yeah.
So this shit was dominating.
Yeah, it was you couldn't. There was okay. So the first Street Fighter toys I remember seeing,
Mm-hmm.
just briefly mentioning the merchandising. The first toys I remember seeing, Capcom had licensed it to Hasbro. And Hasbro, rather than making new toys, because that would take time and they got to get this shit to the market,
Right.
recolored G.I. Joes.
Are you shitting me?
And so it was the packaging actually
How do you
said,
recolor a G.I. Joe to look like Zangief?
and it
How
was
do you
like the
even-
little like 3-inch, 4-inch, whatever the smaller G.I. Joes from
Yeah.
that era, from the late 80s, early
Yeah.
90s. They were just recolored to look like the Street Fighter characters, and the packaging still had the G.I. Joe logo and also said Street Fighter. And it would just be like I remember the Cobra character, I think his name was Road Pig,
Mm-hmm.
was recolored green. And so he was Blanca, and he just had red hair.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was Blanca. It was just Road Pig, but green.
It's just a regular looking dude.
Yeah,
With
but green with red hair.
Yeah.
That was Blanca. And like generic G.I. Joe ninja character now with blonde hair and a red gi. That's
Yeah.
Ken.
Yeah.
And it was the cheapest. Like I didn't. That was at the height of the Street Fighter hype.
Right.
I knew no one who wanted them.
Right.
Like I knew some people
Why,
who got
why
them.
would you?
I knew people who got them. I got the Ken because my mom was like, "You like Street Fighter."
Now, what kills me is if they had marketed it as Street Fighter 2 themed G.I. Joes, which they did
Which
this
is
kind of
essentially
shit back
was
then.
what it was.
Yeah, then kids would have ate it up.
But they didn't. It was like the Street Fighter toys, part of the G.I. Joe universe.
I never saw that crossover episode.
There wasn't. There wasn't one.
Before we dig into more home ports,
Mhm.
we have to mention the movie.
Yeah.
We have to mention Street Fighter the movie.
Yes.
Which, when I learned Street Fighter the movie was a thing, 'cause I don't remember the year it came
I
out.
saw
but
it in
was,
the theater. It was 95 or 96.
Yeah, so I was in first grade.
Yeah.
But I learned years later that I was like, there's a Street Fighter movie? Why does no one talk about it? Oh my God. And then I saw it.
And then you learned why no one talks about it.
Then I saw it.
Before it came out, first it was announced in like EGM and GamePro, and everybody was so
Oh, hold on.
Hype.
We should state we're discussing the first live action Street Fighter movie because there is a second
Yeah.
one.
yeah. The second one came out in what 07?
Yeah, it was Legend of Chun-Li or
Yeah,
whatever. and it
07, 08,
it was
something like that.
The worst.
I was already on a Rocky Cast when that came out.
Yeah.
I remember I was at the theater that night for rehearsal, and I looked at this poster and I was like, they're doing it again? What are they doing?
So Street Fighter the movie comes out,
Mhm.
and this it was right also in the middle of the Street Fighter 2 craze.
Mhm.
What was the hype for this like?
Okay, when it was first announced, everyone lost their shit.
Yeah.
They're like, "Oh my God, Street Fighter movie!
Mhm.
This is going to be amazing.
They're gonna
This is
get
gonna
Jackie
be-
Chan.
This is going to be the greatest film of all time." And then the trailers came out.
They're gonna get I don't know who would be Ken. Bruce Willis. That's Ken. That's just decided it.
Yeah, when the trailers hit,
I guess he'd be Guile.
100% U-turn on the
Yeah.
hype. Like everyone was done already. They were like, "That looks dumb as hell."
Yeah.
Like I knew few people who even bothered to see it in the theater,
Mhm.
and I was in their prime demographic age group,
Mhm.
and I knew very few people who bothered to see it in the theater.
Yeah.
I finally saw it because my mom wanted to see it, so she paid for the pay-per-view. And so me and my mom are sitting at home watching it, and I remember like there's a scene where the Honda character is like trying to keep somebody in the back of a van for some reason,
Yeah.
and my mom turns to me and she's like, "I've watched you play this game. What the hell are they
Honda
doing?"
never shoves anyone in a
Yeah.
van.
And I'm like, I don't even know. And
Yeah.
she was like, and I love Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, and I can't watch this. And I'm like, first, why do you love Jean-Claude Van Damme
blood
movies?
sport this ain't, mother.
And my mom loves that shit. She loves bad action movies.
I do too.
But-
I think me and your mom would get along.
Her favorite right now
Mhm.
for the last 10 years is Doom. She loves the Carl Urban Doom movie.
What?
The one with The Rock.
Carl Urban was in Doom?
Yeah, he was the main character. Do you not remember that?
No.
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
He went on to do Dread.
Yeah.
He just has the thing for single word action
Shitty
movies
action
that have a
movies.
D in it.
Yeah.
Hey, whoa. 2012 Dread was amazing.
Uh-huh.
You call
Anyway,
your tits.
So yeah, it was bad. It was a bad movie.
Yeah.
But Capcom did convince a company called, I want to say it was Incredible Technologies was the name of the company, to make a game version of the movie
Street
for
Fighter,
arcades.
the movie, the game.
And Capcom put it in arcades themselves.
My God.
And it includes the worst parts of Street Fighter and the worst parts of Mortal Kombat.
That's the fascinating part is Street Fighter.
Yeah.
At this point in time, as far as any normal human was concerned, there were two fighting games.
Yeah.
There was Street Fighter and there was Mortal Kombat. And children fought and died on playgrounds.
What about Fatal Fury on the Neo Geo? You
Yeah.
shut your mouth.
No one has $600, Steven. Get out of here.
I played so much Fatal Fury 2 during that era, and I was the one guy who was like, Fatal Fury is good too. And they're like, shut up,
Yeah.
stupid. You got Mortal Kombat.
But even then, most of the Neo Geo fighters still fall into the Street Fighter 2 style
Yes.
of play.
Right.
So basically, there's Street Fighter and there's Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
And then what does Street Fighter do? They say, let's make a Mortal Kombat game. Why?
The thing is,
Why?
it is Street Fighter the movie, the game, is built on a broken version of the Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo engine.
Mm-hmm.
It has all the moves from Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo.
Mm-hmm.
Has the super meter, has all the characters. Also, it has Sawada.
What?
They made a character for it. He's Sawada. Was he in the movie? I don't know. Maybe. I'm
Could-
not willing to go back and watch it
Could have
again.
been. No one knows.
So there are, if I remember right, there are 14 characters in Street Fighter the movie, the game.
Mm-hmm.
There's the 12 characters from Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo,
Right.
plus Akuma, plus Sawada.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't not have Sawada.
Of course. Sawada, the most beloved Street Fighter character. I remember when I played Alpha 2 Gold for the first time, and I just ran through it with Sawada.
And I remember I picked up Cap SNK2 and was so disappointed by the lack of Sawada representation.
God damn it. I think that's enough about Street Fighter the movie and
It's
Street Fighter the
awful.
movie the game.
Don't-
But it did have to come up.
Yeah.
I do want to mention the other home ports.
Mm-hmm.
The most prominent, other than the Super Nintendo one, would have
Yeah.
been the Genesis port.
Well, there was a lot of hype for it when it was coming out on Genesis, and basically mainly because the Genesis was outselling the Super Nintendo at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and people who owned a Genesis were pissed off
Mm-hmm.
that the hottest game at the time was on the Super NES and not on the Genesis.
Mm-hmm.
So they were demanding a copy. But you have to remember that was when Nintendo still had that rule.
Mm-hmm.
Capcom couldn't make a Sega game,
Right.
and Capcom defied the rule.
Mm-hmm.
Street Fighter was so big that Capcom said, fuck you, Nintendo. I'll take Street Fighter with me.
Yeah.
And I'll go to the Genesis.
And Nintendo just let them. There was no litigation. There was no anything.
Basically, what happened was Capcom said, you're about to lose Street Fighter and Mega Man and Breath of Fire and everything else
Right.
unless you change the rules.
Mm-hmm.
And Nintendo buckled.
Hmm.
They caved.
Yeah.
That was when it finally happened. Now, there might have been some other mitigating factors. There might have been
Right.
other companies also threatening
Yeah,
to
it
go
could
to
have
Sega.
been years of everyone going, stop fucking doing this, I
Right.
swear.
Because I'm sure that Acclaim was also a strong voice in this.
Right.
Because for years, Capcom, Acclaim, and to a minor extent Konami were the only companies that were even trying to do both platforms.
Right.
But Capcom was the one. They were the ones who finally had the weight to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
And then they announced it for the Genesis. And it was going to be the Champion Edition
Mm-hmm.
instead of the Turbo, or instead of the Standard.
Right.
And then it ended up being the same on both. But
Yeah.
and it came out like a month after the Super NES version.
And I never played the Genesis version before the other day when I played it on my RetroPod for the first time. And obviously the sound is just bad. It sounds really bad.
yeah.
But
Now
everything
also,
else in the game.
At roughly that same time, actually just before it came out on the Genesis or the Super NES, Japan got it on the PC Engine.
Which is a fantastic port.
Yeah, and it's a miraculous port that it fit on a fucking Hue card. It's an oversized Hue card just
Yeah.
to get the whole game on it. And they had to release a controller for it.
Yeah, because it was a 2-button controller.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do?
I've got 2 of the 6-button turbo pads just
Yeah.
for my copy of Street Fighter 2 for my PCE.
Now, was that an arcade perfect port, the PC version?
It's certainly as arcade perfect as the PC Engine could have done.
Yeah, because
It doesn't have the intro.
Yeah,
it doesn't have the
which the
attract
Genesis
mode.
version did have with
this
what
is
were
the only home version that has Simon and Max.
Simon and Max, yeah.
Yeah. Though they recolored one of them.
Did they?
Because one of them in the arcade version was an African American,
Mm-hmm.
and in the home version
Is he white?
Is another white guy.
Son of a bitch.
Well, they didn't want to show interracial violence.
I could see that, I guess.
Yeah.
Because he was the guy getting punched.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. I can. It's.
Well,
I can't tell if that's okay or not.
Even if he was the puncher.
I guess it's still interracial violence.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but if he was the, I don't know. I'm
Well,
not.
then it's just a black guy beating up on a white guy.
You know what? I'm not even gonna go there.
Yeah,
at
all of it is a bad place, and I can
We-
understand why they did it.
We need to escape this
Yes.
portion of the show
Yes.
as fast as possible. I had not played an Arcade Perfect or Near Arcade Perfect version. Because I haven't played it in the arcade since that time at Papa John's.
Yeah.
I've not touched the Street Fighter
I've
2
played
arcade machine.
emulators, but
But even the arcade version emulated, I haven't played. My first experience playing the arcade version since I was a child was like 3 days ago,
okay,
and it was the Saturn version.
which is still not the arcade version.
Is it not?
It's
It's
got
close
some
to it,
changes.
right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's as close as a home port was going to get.
which is, yeah, I mean, that's my point. To a casual player like myself, I would not discern a difference.
No.
And I remember being so taken aback by the backgrounds because they have these like multiple
Yeah.
layers of scrolling in them,
Yeah.
which if they have them in the other home ports are not nearly as noticeable. I
No.
mean, I can't imagine they do in the Super Nintendo version.
No, they don't have the was it parallax scrolling.
Yeah, and
They don't have that on the Super NES versions. If they do, it's not until Alpha 2.
yeah.
And the Genesis and PCE versions also do not have that I'm aware of.
Yeah. So playing that version,
The most notable stage for that is going to be Chun-Li's stage with the bicycles.
I don't know that I played her stage. I noticed it. I was playing it. I was like, this is really different. Graphically, it's really different because I'm so accustomed to Street
home
Fighter
port.
version or the Super Nintendo version of Street
Right.
Fighter 2 that it doesn't. It looks weird. It's like it's I don't know. It's like whenever you first get an HD TV and you watch a movie and you're like, oh my god, you know.
Yeah.
And so I've been playing the shit out of the Saturn version.
Yeah.
And Dhalsim's stage is where I
Oh,
first
yeah,
really
Because
noticed
there's a shit ton more elephants.
right in
than
the
there are on home
background.
port.
And it just looked phenomenal.
Mhm.
And I'm not a person that notices backgrounds in fighting games because I'm so bad at them that I have to pay such close attention to the game. But I had so much fun playing the Saturn version. And if I were to recommend one to anybody, if you have a Saturn and can burn games, burn a copy of that.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal because you also get to play with a great controller. PS2 and Xbox
True.
can have a good version,
Yeah.
but you can't play them.
Well, you can. You can play the Xbox version. It has a good D-pad.
Yeah, I guess so. But then you got to play on an Xbox.
Yeah.
And I'm not a huge Xbox guy.
Now, as far as home versions go,
Mm-hmm.
there was because
Because we're missing a couple that we haven't covered.
Oh
yet.
yeah, so we had Turbo, and then Super came out for only the Genesis and the Super NES,
Mm-hmm.
and then it just kind of stopped in the 16-bit era, and there was still demand.
Mm-hmm.
People really wanted Super Turbo,
Right.
and it came out on the 3DO.
Why?
I don't know, but
Why, Capcom?
okay. Now I've never owned a 3DO. I've never owned that game on 3DO.
Because there's no reason to own a
I
3DO.
wanted it so hard. Every time we'd go to Sam's Club, for some reason, Sam's Club was the only place I ever saw 3DO games.
Mhm.
And they always had it there. And I was like, oh,
Because it was the same copy that no one ever
yeah,
bought.
I know. And I was like, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo.
What is the controller even like on the 3DO? Would it have even been...
I don't know.
Mm.
I don't even. So I just stared at it and I was like, I someday.
Mhm.
And no, I never played it, but I did look at I've seen videos, and it looks all right. It looks pretty close to Arcade Perfect for Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. So
Right.
whatever. I'm sure the controls are garbage because
Yeah.
I can't imagine that the 3DO is able to really pull that off.
Yeah.
Um,
I can't imagine the 3DO ever really pulled anything off.
right.
And I know we're going to have a 3DO fan write in defending it. Well, we're gonna, whatever, man.
have the Gold Star version of the 3DO,
I'm sure there was a great 3DO game.
no,
I'll give you one.
no.
But
But then there were other home ports. There was the PC versions.
Mhm.
And in Europe, it apparently got ported to like 1,000 PCs.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not going to go into that because Europe and their PC games is a question for somebody else who knows more about
You haven't
European
played
PC
the ZX
games.
Spectrum version
right?
of Street Fighter 2 Turbo Hyper Fighting?
Yeah, I'm sorry, but the Amiga version is far superior to the ST. No, I don't care. Somebody else needs to go into
If
that
you've
and
got a
tell me.
BBC Micro,
Right.
then
Somebody else can tell me which of those versions is superior. I'm sure they're great.
Right.
But on DOS in the US,
yeah.
you could get it at Walmart in a box that looked exactly like the cover to the Super Nintendo version, but
Mhm.
much, much, much bigger. And it said Street Fighter 2. And I was like, yeah, Street Fighter 2. and then I can play it when Mom's playing Final Fantasy on the Super Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it home, and it's on a single fucking floppy disk. Actually, sorry, there were 3 floppy disks in there. There was 2 for Street Fighter 2 and 1 for Street Fighter.
The original Street Fighter.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
There was a DOS port of Street Fighter 1 that was garbage. Like, it makes the arcade version of Street Fighter look like an amazing game.
I feel like to get that made, they had to lock a Capcom employee in an office.
Capcom had nothing to do with this.
Did they not?
No.
Whoever made it had locked someone in an office till they spit out a floppy containing Street Fighter, because then he killed himself.
Yeah, because it's, first of all, it only has 1 attack button. Second of all the moves are done with different inputs than the arcade version of Street Fighter 1.
Yeah.
Which was already not accurate.
Mm-hmm.
The characters are 1/3 the size that they were in the arcade and look like NES characters.
Ugh, God.
And it's just garbage. It's awful. Don't play it. And then there was the 2 Street Fighter 2 discs, which looked graphically pretty close to the arcade, not to the Super NES. But it was programmed wrong.
Yeah.
Really, really wrong. First of all, there was 2 attack buttons now. 1 for punch and 1 for kick.
Right. Of course. You got your punch and your kick. What else do you need?
Second, it wouldn't allow you to hit a direction and an attack button at the same time.
Oh, man.
So special moves are right out.
Right.
That's gone.
None of those.
My favorite part...
I mean, that wasn't a groundbreaking part of the Street
Right.
Fighter formula
No, not at all.
anyway. Just
Whoever programmed the game accidentally gave Dhalsim's attacks higher priority than any other thing in the game, so if Dhalsim is attacking anywhere on the screen at any time, he wins.
I feel like there was some poor programmer like screaming at his boss. He's like, you cannot release this. We are not done.
Yeah.
It does not work. And they're like, fuck it. You're out of time, Ted. Sorry. It's out the door.
Later, there was a PC port of Super Street Fighter 2, done in-house by Capcom, and it's perfect. It is a perfect DOS port, and it came with a gamepad that looks like a Genesis controller with the 2 rows of 3 buttons, so it's perfect for it.
A fight pad, as they're now called.
That one was called the Capcom Pad 6.
I'm glad it's called a fight pad now.
Yeah. So I had
Guys, you
that.
got the new Mad Catz Pad 6.
Yeah. And then I also got a copy of Mega Man X for PC, also a perfect port. Also came with the Capcom Pad 6. So I had 2 Capcom Pad 6s, or Capcom Pads 6.
Damn it, Capcom.
And I had them both plugged in to game ports on my PC so that I could play multiplayer Super Street Fighter 2.
Nice.
Perfect port. Excellent. And then someone else ported Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo to PC. Only they ported it from the 3DO port.
Could you imagine being the programmer that they're like, hey, you need to port Street Fighter 2 Turbo to DOS? Oh, I guess. All right. But we only have the code for the 3DO version. I quit.
Yeah. But the thing is that Super was done so well, and then Super Turbo somehow got butchered in the translation. That's disappointing. And it didn't support the Capcom Pad 6.
What? What are you going to do with all your Capcom Pad 6?
Right? So those are unfortunate. So we never got a good port of Super Turbo until the 32-bit consoles came out.
Right.
And Alpha came out on them first. So we already had Street Fighter Alpha on the PlayStation and Saturn before Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo came out on PlayStation and Saturn. So it felt like a step back by the time it was available.
Absolutely. Because Alpha was just... And I've not played much of the original Alpha, but especially Alpha 2.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I can't... It's hard to play Alpha 2 Gold and go right back to Street Fighter.
But Alpha already has as many, if not more, characters than Super Turbo. And it's more smooth. The animation is amazing.
Right.
It's just a better game.
And correct me if I'm wrong or if this is just hearsay or whatever, but it has been mentioned before that the combo system in Street Fighter 2 was basically unintentional.
Yes, it was a glitch in Street Fighter 2.
Like, they didn't mean for it to happen.
Yeah, the programmers have admitted that it was a glitch, that they accidentally made the combat system to where one move could seamlessly transition into the next.
Right. Which has now become a staple in fighting games.
The staple.
Yeah.
Essentially. And they left it in because they were like, oh, it's kind of fun if you happen to figure it out. And Street Fighter 2 was the perfect storm. Like, it was this combination of intentional and accidental programming that just happened to come together into what was exactly what the fighting game market needed.
Right.
So,
And that's why I think the alpha games feel so smooth, because taking that same system and making it intentional,
Mhm.
it smooths it
oh
out
yeah,
so much more.
Really, they started that with Super
Mhm.
because Super would start to tell you if you got a combo.
Right.
Like the text would fly in and be like 4-hit combo.
But they still couldn't change it too incredibly much, because then
Right.
it'd be too different from
Exactly.
other versions of the same game.
Yeah. So while it acknowledged that you were doing the combos,
Mhm.
it wasn't built with the combos in mind like Alpha was.
Right.
Alpha
It was
is
still tacked on.
just so good.
Yeah, I'm still on Alpha 2. Alpha 2 is where it's
Yeah.
at for me.
Alpha 3 was too much for me.
Alpha 3, it for years it was my favorite. Going back now, Alpha 3 is a little over the top and
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
And 2, I enjoy 2 a lot.
The first time I played Alpha 3 was on a burned Japanese copy that somebody found for PlayStation.
I played Alpha 3 on my PSP.
Yeah.
So as much as I bitch about playing fighting games on good controllers, I played Alpha 3 on a PSP.
Yeah.
And I mean for years I played Alpha 3 on PSP.
I played so much of Alpha 2, Marvel Street Fighter, and Alpha 3 on my PS1.
Mm.
Like so much over the years. Like that was every day after school we would just pile in at my house and play one of those.
Yeah.
But
I think the only home releases we haven't really covered are we talked about Saturn. PS1 is basically the same as Saturn.
it's
It's
literally
the same game.
as Saturn.
We talked about PS2,
Now,
Xbox version.
One thing about the Saturn and PlayStation versions, because those were some of the earliest games on Saturn and PlayStation, was
Mhm.
Alpha 1 and then ultimately the Street Fighter collections and stuff.
Mm.
And that was because it was such early games on those systems,
Mm.
it showed us one of the disadvantages early on
Mhm.
was the load time
Yeah.
on both of those systems. 'Cause we were,
Which isn't horrible.
no,
at
but it's
all.
not great,
Yeah.
especially on the PlayStation.
Mm-hmm.
And we were all coming from Super Nintendo and Genesis, cartridge-based, instant loading, and in comes the PlayStation and Saturn, and you select your characters and then you wait for 30 or 40 seconds before you can play.
The Saturn version is not that bad at all.
Right. But when you're so used to trading controllers
Immediately,
so
yeah.
quickly, and
It
now
makes a
suddenly
difference.
there's that extra, generally minute per 2 rounds.
Right.
That was painful. And so when Street Fighter Alpha 2 came out on Super Nintendo, we were like, yeah, let's go back to that.
Oh yeah.
Huh.
Alpha 2. Fight. Okay, no, wait a minute. Don't fight.
Yeah, wait. Hold on a second.
Okay, now fight.
Round 1. Fight eventually.
Final home version I want to mention is HD Remix.
Mhm.
I know very little about it. I've played it.
Yeah.
I didn't love the new art.
I don't hate the new art. I think it looks all right.
The new one version on the Switch,
Ultra.
There's so many versions now.
Hyper
that-
was PS2 and Xbox. Ultra is Switch.
seems to be based on HD Remix.
Yes.
A lot of big Street Fighter fans didn't love HD Remix. I think it was mostly just people not loving the new art, as
Now,
far as I can
A
tell.
lot of people commended HD Remix for its netcode.
Mhm.
Apparently, it was the first fighting game that did online play correctly.
Well, when it came out, I remember fighting games were still struggling hard with netcode.
Oh, yeah.
And it came out and it was like, oh, this one works.
Yes.
And it was a big deal.
And it convinced people to just put up with the other complaints they had with it at
Right.
the time until other games came around and
Obviously.
showed us how to do it.
I do want to get into some questions. We did have a couple questions from our newest patron. No, actually not our newest anymore. One of our newer patrons
Hey.
that is at our participant tier. So I did want to address his questions.
Mhm.
First one, and I've already thought about and written out my answers, so you
Yeah.
just get to be on the
I
spot.
skipped your answers because I was like, I'm going to hear this on the show.
I think I know the answer to this already. This is him speaking now. This is Dougie. Now, I was saying Dougie MCG,
Yeah.
and then you said McG.
Which is how I read it.
I'm just going to say Dougie.
Okay.
This is from
Yeah.
Dougie.
Hey.
I
Dougie.
think I know the answer to this already, but what do you rate higher? Street Fighter 2 Turbo on SNES or Champion Edition with 6-button controller on the Mega Drive Genesis? You do know the answer, Super Nintendo version. That's all the way for me.
You know, I'm going to disagree.
You bastard.
Yeah.
You're fired.
As much as I'm a Super Nintendo fan,
Mm-hmm.
I will say that the Super NES version looks better and it sounds better.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something about the Genesis version, there's something with the timing
Mhm.
that feels slightly different to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it always has. It feels just, I don't know, I have a hard time describing it. The Super Nintendo version, after having played the Genesis and the PCE ports, the Super NES versions feel a little floatier somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Like the animations are so smooth that it almost feels like there's a mild delay.
Hmm.
And so yeah, I actually do prefer it on the Genesis when I'm just
Interesting.
playing it. If I
Right.
want to look at it, I absolutely would rather look at the Super NES
If you're gonna
version.
watch someone else play,
Oh yeah,
there you go.
because man, it sounds and looks like garbage, like just steaming hot garbage.
Next one up is there a way to purposefully activate Ryu or Ken's uppercut fireball combo? I only get it when messing up a dragon punch.
I don't know.
I actually tried to do it.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, because I know what he was talking about.
Yeah. Because I
It's-
used to accidentally do that all the
Yeah,
time.
and then you do this punch Hadoken combo, and you're like, that was awesome. And you try to do it again, and then you're like, well, I just did Shoryuken now, and I don't want to.
It's ludicrously effective when it happens too.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
It does a ton of damage.
Yeah. So as far as I can tell, certainly there is a way to do it intentionally.
Someone must have that ability.
But it appears to be some level of move canceling that I'm unable to replicate
Yeah,
intentionally.
I do not have that ability.
in any way, shape, or
I played
form.
so much Street Fighter, but I'm not going to claim that I'm good at it.
And this is also our last episode of the month, so this is our thank you show. So again, thank you to Dougie for being at the participant tier on our Patreon
Yeah.
and for his questions. And I've put these in order. This is oldest to newest patrons because we've gotten a lot of new patrons since the last show. And oh my God, we didn't do the drawing.
Oh, shit.
No, we'll do the drawing too. I totally forgot about it. I got it sitting right here, the hat and everything. It's okay. Drawing should probably be at the end anyway. Actually, let's do the drawing and then we'll do the thank yous for our wonderful patrons on our Patreon at patreon.com/Retro Warriors. This drawing is for a giveaway copy of Shock Troopers 2.
Okay.
Saturn, if you want to reach into the name hat.
For a split second there, I thought you were going to say it was for a copy of Shock Treatment, the sequel to the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
I knew this whole show. I was like, we're forgetting something. It's the drawing.
Shock Troopers and also Shock Treatment
Yeah.
is going to Nick Brown.
Ooh, Nick Brown. If you want to check your Patreon inbox, you should have a copy of Shock Troopers 2 sitting there. Anyway, on to the thank yous. These are all the people that deign to give us money on a monthly basis, and we are very, very grateful to every single cent that we receive. We have
Yes.
gotten a lot of new patrons this month, so thank you
Which
very,
is
very
really
much.
exciting. Every time
Absolutely.
that you message our group chat for the
Mhm.
show and say we got another patron, I'm just super stoked by that.
Mm.
That means that there's one other person out there who is willing to put up with us for an hour a week.
It's my favorite notification to get on my phone. It means so much to me. And a lot of people, after becoming patrons, have been reaching out to us and talking to us on Patreon and reaching out on Facebook. So absolutely, thank you. Do keep doing that, please. We love it. And let's get down to it. Our thank yous are going to start with Kyokilla, which is our good friend Jared's YouTube handle, if you want to check him out. Next up is Mark Meredith, who is from Australia.
Who will tell us all about the Segmeg.
Yeah, all about the same. Next up is Robbie Cervantes, our very own.
Who is actually a character in Soul Calibur 2.
Yes, indeed. Our very own Andrew Derry, who does Classic
Okay.
Corner. Michael Winters.
Mhm.
My wonderful wife, Courtney, who is not the first patron, might I add.
Yeah, I would. She has to put up with you for way more than an hour a week.
Right, absolutely. So,
Yeah.
she's
Unlike
basically...
the other patrons.
Basically, she's funneling money into the Patreon, so she doesn't have to deal with me for a while.
Yeah, that's her pay to not deal with you for an hour a week.
Next up is Justice Allison. Nick Brown.
Who just won a copy of Shock Troopers 2.
He did indeed. Mike Spinakos, who has his own show, Video Rangers podcast, if you're into crappy movies and people enjoying them.
Yeah.
Next up is Grady Haynes.
Maybe he can do an episode about Shock Treatment, the sequel to the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Mike, get on that, please.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next up is Rob Powers, who tweeted at us the Street Fighter tweet today.
Yeah.
Kevin Donlin. This, dude, you got
fuck one up.
Edward. You got to write into me and let me know how to say it. Edward Majewski Jr. Andrew Park, who actually, oh God, I forgot the name of it. I was reading. He has a video game blog.
Oh, does he?
And he was talking to us about Saturn shmups, and he had a great article counting down some Saturn shmups, and a bunch of them I'd never heard of. And I'm blanking on the name. I'll mention it next week. Sorry about that. Totally forgot. But I was reading it. It's a great blog. I enjoy it. It's right on the tip of my tongue. I don't know.
You can always put a link on the website.
There you go.
There you go.
Next up is Mike Morse, Sean R. Stacy, Martin Burke, Fidel Suarez, and then I believe this is officially, these are all the ones we've gotten since last show.
Uh-oh.
Nick Mellon, Logan Sharp, who I actually used to work with. Thank you, Logan.
Oh, nice.
Dougie McG,
Yeah.
which is how I'm saying it from now on. I'm deferring to your pronunciation. Ian Oberschlake, which I think I said correctly. Chris Minochi.
Don't hesitate to correct him on anything. I'm
Please
not
d-
even trying.
please
I'm letting him
don't.
do it.
And then this is my favorite one. This is our friend Josh, is supporting us on Patreon under the name Fat Daddy. So thank you, Josh. So to all of
Josh, who has been on this show before.
he has, yeah, he used to be our producer.
Yeah.
Back when we did that whole thing.
Yeah.
So to all of our patrons, thank you so very, very much. Again, as we've said before, every single dollar makes a huge difference to us. We are trying as hard as we can to grow with new mics and editors and posts and all this other shit.
Yeah.
And soon a dedicated recording space with comfortable chairs that don't destroy my ass.
Someday one of us are actually going to be able to play one of these games we talk about.
One day. Yeah, possibly. I don't know.
Yeah.
If you want to support us on Patreon and get all of the fun goodies like episodes of Classic Corner, which is our spin-off show done by Andrew.
Which is so good. Just
I like-
consistently good.
I just love listening to him
Yeah.
like, oh, God.
It's I love Andrew. He's a friend of mine, but it's like a child discovering the color purple.
Yeah, it's fun.
Either the actual color or the movie The Color Purple.
I always refer to it as outsider art. It's someone that doesn't play retro games,
Right.
playing them and being like, I guess Super Metroid's okay. Like it's just so fun.
I swear for a split second in the chat when we were talking, he had forgotten the difference between Bonk and Chuck Rock, and I died a little inside.
So please, the Classic Corner is available to everyone at every tier on our Patreon.
It's amazing.
So please do check it out if
Definitely.
you're donating. You should have it in your Patreon
If you are
feed.
enjoying this show, you will absolutely enjoy Classic Corner.
You can also get early access episodes, video episodes. You can send us questions like Dougie did. All sorts of fun stuff.
Yes.
So please do go check us out. Patreon.com/Retro Warriors. And that's it. Unless you had anything else. Oh, hold on, real quick. Into the show. Who's your preferred Street Fighter 2 character?
Just vanilla Street Fighter 2?
Any Street Fighter 2 character that has existed in a Street Fighter 2 game.
Okay. It has to be a Street Fighter 2 game.
Yes.
Okay. I probably lean Guile.
Really?
Either Guile or Ken. Those are my...
God.
Back in the day, it was Sagat. I was
Yeah.
100% Sagat.
You play all the characters I hate to fight. For me, it is and always has been and will forever be Ryu.
Yeah.
But now, just because of his name, it's tied with Violent Ken because that's just too hilarious.
Yeah.
Who I've still never even played as.
I had a friend back in the day, my friend Davis, if he ever happens to listen to this.
Yeah.
He has...
Violent Davis.
Yes, Violent Davis. He has a ridiculous, savant level ability at fighting games.
Mhm.
Like he had never played Tekken 3 before, was at a GameStop where they were doing a Tekken 3 tournament.
Mhm.
He just entered it on a whim, won, got a copy of Tekken 3, brought it home. But he has just a savant level ability. And he used to always play as Ken.
Mhm.
And he had this running joke that if he picked Ken any color other than the gold gi,
Yeah.
he couldn't win. And he would just throw a fight if he accidentally picked red Ken or blue Ken or whatever. And then he would pick gold Ken and immediately win without taking damage.
I have some superstitions about my own costume color choices.
He also had the ability to call all of his moves as they happened, as if it was fucking Dragon Ball or some shit. There's a, especially in the Alpha and the Marvel series, Ken has a vertical attack called the Shoryuken.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime that he would do it, as he was performing the move, he would say, time for vertical. And then he would do that. And if he happened to say it out loud first, somehow I couldn't block anymore. His timing was perfect if he said it first.
Yeah.
If he didn't say it, I would always be blocking.
Right.
And I don't know. Anyway, it's infuriating.
Other than that, next week will hopefully be Double Dragon 4.
Yeah.
That's what I'm planning on us covering
Well,
next week. But we'll see.
Assuming... Otherwise, we're going to just have to do a Resident Evil episode.
Wait, God, I'm terrified already.
Yeah.
Anyway, do go check out all of our stuff. As we said before, our Patreon, which you can find at our website, retrowarriors.net, which at the time of this release will be potentially reaching our second milestone and releasing some weekly written content. So please absolutely do check it out.
Exciting.
And that's it. We're done. Hopefully Double Dragon 4 next week. And thank you for listening.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm forgetting. I'm stalling because I'm forgetting something.
I think you're forgetting to let us cling together.
That's what it is, of course. And as always, let us cling together.
Us cling together.